On the basis of what? Well, what we want people to see and hear. Right, okay, gotcha. And so it goes on. And now we're having this criteria for banning of whether it is harmful. Not if it's illegal. No, is it harmful? So what do you call harmful? Well, saying anything that we don't want people to hear. So it goes on. So what has happened with Alex Jones and many others now is gathering and gathering. All the time they are censoring him before the point of delivery. And that's what they want to do to bring about this situation where they only have people seeing and hearing what they want them to see and hear. Now, I had a strange. I was demonetized, as they say, from YouTube a long time ago, I'm subject to what they call shadow banning, where you can actually post it, but then they make sure it's not seen by anything like the number of people it would normally be seen by. And then I was banned by Facebook, just banned by Facebook, out of nowhere, no reason, nothing. And quite a lot of people kicked off on Facebook, about what are you bloody doing? And out of nowhere, 7 days later, they just put me back up and said, oh, it was a mistake. Well, it wasn't a mistake, because if people hadn't have kicked off, I'd still be banned. So what's going to happen when the trigger comes out? I don't know. That's going to be fun. But you see, we've got a choice. We can speak our truth and let the world be what it is, or we can keep censoring ourselves, and then drip, 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 drip. More and more is censored. The criteria for censorship gets wider and wider, and eventually you're banned anyway. So we might as well tell the truth straight up off the bat, and then what happens happens. So that's what I do, and how they'll react, I don't know. And frankly, I don't particularly care, because if I did, I'm giving them power.
If David does get completely deplatformed after the release of The Trigger in September this year, September 11, his website, davidicke.com, link is in the description box below this video. Whatever's happening in the news, he puts regular videos up, links to stories from alternative media. Highly recommend you keep track of what he's doing on his website.
Oh, there's also the Renegade, a movie's come out, Renegade, which is a feature-length movie about my life and work. It's not long come out, available through davidicke.com on a number of different platforms. People have tried to get it banned, but when the platforms have watched it, they can't find a reason to ban it. But it had, some of the premieres have been banned. But it's a film that shows me as I am and not as I'm painted. And also there's an enormous amount of information in there, which is accessible to people who know nothing about this information. It's really accessible. It's not all that, deep on all of it. It's very accessible. So that's available as well.
What was the reason they cited for banning you from Australia, David?
Because this tells you something, Shaun. It shows you, this force is extremely arrogant, but a lot of its arrogance is trying to convince itself of its omnipotence, as well as trying to convince everyone else. And that ban from Australia, 4 hours before my plane left, having given me a visa to speak in the September before, months and months before, really was an indication of how frightened this cabal is of information. I was told by the immigration minister, David Coleman. He must have been a journalist once, because his backbone was vibrating like crazy when the Israel far-right front in Australia told him to ban me. One bloke, basically, telling 25 million Australians what they can and cannot hear. Disgusting arrogance. But anyway, it's more than arrogance, like I say. And another reason, two reasons they gave, or he gave, because the ministry gave me the visa, because they couldn't find a reason not to. I've been there 10 times, not a problem. But now suddenly 4 hours before my plane left, it's a problem. It cost us £30,000 in all the cost of putting the tour on, which then suddenly, 4 hours notice, gone. They have no comeback for that. They don't have to reimburse us or anything. And two of the other reasons were my views on vaccines and my view that the human-caused global warming is a hoax. Something I've been saying for a very long time, and pointing out there was a reason why they were doing it, and that reason is now becoming clear, becoming public. Anyway, but so here you have, just take the vaccines and human-caused global warming. You have the big pharma cartel globally that basically can say what it likes. It can claim what it likes. It controls the medical professions via the medical associations. It controls government health policy. Whatever you have, it's a scalpel or a drug. If every problem looks like a nail, every answer looks like a hammer. So there you go with that. They can say what they like. They can advertise on television. All the medical correspondents come on repeating big pharma propaganda. And yet one man going into Australia, talking for 4 hours each time in 6 Australian cities about many connected subjects, but say vaccines. He's a problem. I'm a problem. That's the scale of fear they have for information. Because when the vaccine information is put for public attention, the big pharma cartel cannot answer it. Therefore, it wants to shut it up. It's a very simple thing. If you can't win, this is how they work. If you can't win the debate, don't have it. So if you want to know what's the agenda, what are big parts of the agenda, simply look at what you can't have an alternative opinion about. You get censored and banned for saying, or abuse for saying, calculated abuse. And then you've got human-caused global warming. Every news bulletin in the frickin' world, year after year after year, we're all gonna die. Okay? One man coming into Australia and saying, we ain't. That's a problem. So we're going to ban him. Oh, don't let him say that. Just take a breath and look at that. The totality of their control of information, and they're terrified of one guy speaking at 6 meetings. That's the scale of fear they have of information to challenge the official narrative, and that's why this hysteria of censorship is happening ever faster.
I know a lot of good people who campaign for causes, and it seems when a cause reaches a certain level, it gets co-opted.
Yeah.
And the people manipulating the public channel that energy into something then that they can profit from. So with the global warming hoax, how is that scam run?
Runs like this. You use the Nazi technique. You keep repeating the lie, and eventually people will believe it. Well, everyone knows that, mate. Why? Because that's all everyone's heard. And you find among the general population, despite the constant propaganda, how many people don't buy it? Because they've got a brain they put on active duty, and they can see through it. Anyway, this is what happened. Is that I said long time ago that human-caused global warming is a hoax for a reason. Because you just say it's a hoax, people are obviously going to ask, well, why is it a hoax? And you have to be able to answer that. Otherwise, you've got no credibility. And there has to be a reason. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a hoax. And the reason is to justify the centralization of power to save the planet. And we already have the blueprints for that in the process, called Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 out of the UN, which seek to centralize power and control over the fine detail of people's lives, control of water, control of energy, control of everything to save the planet, right? This is why the hoax is being played. Then you have this lady, Ocasio-Cortez, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a politician who's not long been elected out of New York, who's come out with something called the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is based on the fact that, according to her, we're going to pass the point where the Earth can be saved 12 years from now. Well, sorry, what about the points we passed before, where we not be able to do anything after this point? But actually, now it's 12 years hence. Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Because we all should be dead now or going on there. I mean, you know, Al Gore, the only thing you know about Al Gore is if his lips are moving, he's bloody lying. And he's been the front man for this thing. I mean, hello. Look at the history of Al Gore. If he ever told the truth, he would genetically implode, right? And you believe in him. Anyway, what happened what happens is her Green Deal demands centralization of power and control over people's lives. Then you've got these people in London, this Extinction Rebellion that's recently shut some streets in London to demand action over human-caused global warming. And they're demanding the same centralization of power. And basically, it's a form of Marxism, communism, you call it fascism, just names, same thing, tyranny, that is being imposed or sought to be imposed through the excuse that we've got to save the world. And what they have done to young children through the propaganda in the schools to frighten little kids that the world's going to end in their lifetimes is absolutely disgusting, and it's child abuse. And you know, it's been a few phrases I've used over the years, like what you hate you become and what you fight you become. And I see these anti-haters full of hate. I see the anti-fascists full of fascism. And you see these free society people imposing a tyranny. Because it's based on this. I am right. End of story. That's where their mentality goes. I am right. Now, everything comes from this. Because I am right, what I say should be imposed on everyone else, because if they don't agree with me, then they are wrong by definition because they say something different to me, and I am right. Goes like this too. I am right, therefore, why should people that say something different to me have freedom of speech? It's like one person said about me once, what is the benefit in allowing him to speak? He actually said that. It was printed in the Independent newspaper magazine. And that person will think he's a paragon of freedom. And so you've got these, what's happened is the left in politics has been hijacked. It's not the liberal left that I grew up in. It's not the liberal left that I supported. The liberal left that in the 60s when I was a kid was going on marches demanding freedom of speech. It's now the progressive fake left that goes on marches and protests demanding that freedom of speech is taken away. And so they've got this in their head, not least because that's all they've heard through the school system. We're all going to die. And I'm sure great numbers of people who were shutting the streets of London and are, supporting Ocasio-Cortez and all this stuff, they genuinely believe what they're saying. But they haven't understood it's a hoax and why it's a hoax, and the fact that they are demanding exactly the changes in society that the hoax was played to impose and justify. And if they did, they would realize that they are being played like a stringed instrument.
because the knee-jerk reaction from some people when they hear the title global warming hoax is that you think that we're not harming Mother Earth, but that's not the case, is it?
I was a national spokesman for the British Green Party. I care deeply about the environment. And you know what's happening, Shaun, is that because of this obsession and focus on the hoax of human-caused global warming, to justify this centralization of global and national power, other real environmental issues are being marginalized. We're not talking about them. What we're seeing is beautiful landscapes being destroyed by massive wind farms to fight a problem that isn't real. How come temperatures were much higher in the medieval warm period, 800, 1,000 years ago? What caused them? Turbocharged handcarts? Hey? Flatulent cattle? I mean, what caused it? Because it weren't souped up 4x4s, was it? And you notice something else. Something else. They keep going on about CO2. CO2! Ah! Without CO2, we'd all be dead. Why do you think the plants grow? I mean, and we're breathing it out. Ban breathing CO2, right? And then you look at the greenhouse gas graph. 98% or thereabouts of greenhouse gases holding the heat in, water vapor and clouds. Ban them, I say. Ban them. CO2, tiny smear, and most of that is naturally caused. So let's demonize the gas of life, shall we? Yeah, that's a good one. Keep saying it enough times and they'll believe that it's real, because everyone knows that, because it's all you've ever heard. So the reason, again, they are banning, and I was banned from Australia in part for my views on this, the reason they're banning alternative views on these things is because they can't win the debate. And because they can't win the debate, they shut it down. And you see this all over the place. I was going to say, the one thing you never hear them talk about when they talk about global warming, it's out today.
The sun.
It's a clear blue sky, and it's the sun. Have you noticed that when the sun comes out, it gets warmer? I have noticed that in my life. So actually, the sun is a source of heat on Earth, and heat warms, which leads us to global warming. Why is the sun left out of it? See, what happened is you had the medieval warm period when temperatures were much higher than they are now. That's when they were, and warm periods have been times of abundance. Times of high carbon dioxide are abundance, because the more you have it, the more the plants grow and the trees grow, the vegetation grows. It's when it's the cold periods that are the danger, that's when things die. So you had the medieval warm period, and then we came down into what they call the Little Ice Age. And that was when, it's still portrayed to this day on some Christmas cards, with people skating on the Thames in London, because every year the Thames froze over. They used to have ice fairs on the Thames. It was so cold. This was the Little Ice Age after the medieval warm period. And then it hit the bottom and it starts to rise up to present day. Now, there was a guy, actually his wife too, often gets forgotten, called Maunder. And they were charting sunspots. This is real. This is the activity of the sun, the energetic activity of the sun. Expresses itself as sunspots, some of which are, bigger than 3 or 4 Earths, some of them. And the more sunspots, the more active the sun is, the more energy it's projecting, the more heat potentially we get. The fewer the sunspots, the less it's projecting. At the very bottom point of the Little Ice Age, when it's at its coldest, is known to this day in climate science as the Maunder minimum. That's when there was virtually no sunspot activity at all. In other words, the heat coming from the sun was much less. then it starts to rise. And you know that people keep saying, this is the hottest day since records began. Yeah, okay, so when did records begin? Let's do that. Did they begin in the medieval warm period? Oh, no. So when did they begin? And you chart it back, and it was when we were coming out of the Little Ice Age. So many of the comparisons with the highest, all this stuff, highest temperature since records began, you've got to look what the temperatures were when records began, and the climate situation. And I've just read a book recently by a guy called Joe Bastardi. He's a meteorologist in America. Wrote a book called The Climate Chronicles. And he says this global warming is complete tosh. And he's one of these nerdy kind of weather obsessives. Ever since he's been a kid, he's obsessed with weather. So when they were coming out with this, this is global warming, because this is how they do it. Anything, it's hot, isn't it? It's global warming. It's bloody cold, isn't it? It's global warming. And so it goes on, Anyway, he goes back and he's looking at these sequences, which they're now saying is global warming. And he's finding the same sequences in the 1950s, the 1940s, the 1930s, and the 20s. And he points one sequence out. He says when the Atlantic cools or the Pacific cools, a sequence of weather consequences knock-on start. When they happened in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, okay, bit extreme weather, innit? Yeah, yeah. Now it's global warming. We're all gonna die. Now, this is the psychological game. And people have got caught up in it. And the Extinction Rebellion have got caught up in it.
Do you think they get caught up in it because crowd psychology comes into effect and every generation has its own end of the world theory? Going back to the Bible, end of days, bubonic plague, Middle Ages, millennium bug. It just reoccurs throughout history.
Yeah, but if you think about this, if you want to focus the attention of the population behind what you want to happen, what more powerful focus can you have than we're all going to die unless we do this, right? That's what global warming is. We're all going to die unless you do this. Unless you support the centralization of global power to save the world, we're all going to die. And you tell the children who are going to be the adults, not very long from now, that you're going to die unless this happens. What are the kids going to do? They're going to call for it, aren't they? They're going to berate their parents for leaving them a dying world. We haven't. It's a hoax, and it's a hoax of the classic technique that I came up with in the 1990s: problem, reaction, solution. This is when you create a problem. You tell the public the version of the problem you want them to believe, so they say something must be done, and then you offer the solutions to the problems you have created. And there's another version, which I call no problem, reaction, solution. That's when you completely invent the problem, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and then do something and you then do what you wanted to do, justified by the no problem. And global warming caused by human activity is a no problem, reaction, solution. And you can ban me from anywhere. I don't give a shit. I'm going to go on speaking my truth. And if people don't like it, well, they could do the other thing. That's all the same to me.
So on the subject of vaccines, as a lad, I had the 6 pricks. I've gone on to live a normal, healthy life, I think. Now, I've researched the war on drugs extensively, and I've researched Big Pharma as a consequence of that and how things are manipulated. So now in America, you've got kids having up to, I don't know what it is, 80, 90 vaccines. You've got mothers being told in some countries that if they don't get the kids vaccinated, they're not going to get benefits.
Yeah, Australia.
Yeah, in Australia.
No, what do they want? Didn't want to be talking about vaccines.
Your favourite.
Yeah.
So I understand vaccine science, and I do believe that vaccine science and vaccines have created benefits for society. But now you've got this over-vaccination problem, and it's all about money at the end of the day, and they can't get sued because if it's a vaccine, they have legal liability because it's sold through the government. It's just a big shakedown on the taxpayers' money.
From the moment that Big Pharma got immunity from prosecution in America for the effects on vaccines, the number of vaccines exploded because they have nothing to lose. The only safety that the kids have from this vaccine onslaught is that the big pharma industry would have some level of empathy and not do what they're doing. But of course, big pharma is an empathy no-go zone. Therefore, they are just coming up with more and more vaccines. There's over 100 still in the pipeline now for everything. They came up with a vaccine to, they say, protect young girls from vaginal cancer. And what has happened is a lot of young girls have had their lives destroyed, even ended by it. And then they came up with this idea that they'd give it to boys as well. Now, you know, I know some of the extremes of transgender might call me out on this, but the last time I saw a male body, including mine in the mirror, it didn't have a vagina. So what are they giving boys this bloody drug for? That's why they're giving it, among other reasons. And so I've looked at this vaccination stuff. My two boys haven't been vaccinated. They're strapping, you know, adults, and they're absolutely fine because their immune system has been allowed to develop to its potential and not been faced with a tidal wave of toxic shite before it's even formed. Thus, it will never be what it could have been otherwise. I had the vaccines when I was a kid in the 50s, but they were very few. And you know, one of the good things about, you know, living quite a long life is that you've seen what life was like before this stuff. People being born today, this is all they know. And therefore, it's very much easier to scam those people because they don't have a radar. They don't have another point of observation. Well, I do because I've lived a long time. So I was born in 1952. And things like childhood diseases like measles, they were seen, as they should be seen still, as kicking in the immune system and kicking it into its full power. And measles, it was like, you know, some of it wasn't, you know, very pleasant here and there, but measles largely was seen as a week or two off school. It was a bloody, all right, you know, I'm going to be able to watch the cricket in the summer on the telly, Brian Johnson and stuff, Freddie Truman, instead of being at school. And you recovered and you got on with your life. And it gave you lifelong immunity because you have, your immune system has got the code of the disease itself in its natural form. So when it comes again, gotcha, no problem. You know, there's shingles. A lot of people get shingles. Shingles are absolutely horrible. But a lot of that comes from the fact that they've not been given immunity through things like measles. And so then you have things like chicken pox. I mean, chicken pox. I got chicken pox. You have a few bloody things on your body, and then you go back to school, you know. Oh no, we're all gonna die. Measles is a deadly disease. And well, how come we never thought about that in the 50s, you know? And we all kind of survived. Because if you can frighten people about a disease, then you're going to get their support for what you say will protect them from it, which is vaccinations, which brings me to this. What we've got now, and again, it's the same principle as if you can't win the debate, shut it down. This is what they're doing with vaccines, but it's something else. But the same theme. If you can't persuade enough people to have the vaccines, you make it compulsory. In Australia, if you indicated, if you're on state benefits and you don't have your child vaccinated according to the government's schedule, you have your benefits cut, which is, again, disgusting tyranny. But then the government of Australia is a disgusting tyranny, and so is the opposition party, the Labour Party, because they're just masks on the same face. They were all united in their support for my ban. And they're pushing mandatory vaccinations. A guy called Richard Pan, Dr. Richard Pan. I wouldn't let him, deal with my toenail, Dr. Richard Pan. He's a state senator in California. He's been funded by Big Pharma. He has led the campaign for compulsory vaccinations in California. Nice man, very good to his mother, never goes home. And so this is happening in many, many states, more and more states now. I saw, even the government minister here was talking about, well, maybe, we'd have to look at mandatory vaccinations as an option. And because measles, right? Measles outbreak in New York. Oh my God, we're all going to die. You see the recurring theme here. So, okay. So all the people that got measles weren't vaccinated, right? Well, no. Some of them were. Yeah, well, most of them were, right? Okay. So how many weren't vaccinated? Why don't you tell us that? How many got the measles in this outbreak that were vaccinated? How many were not vaccinated? No, they won't do that. They won't do that because there'll be a question. Well, how come these kids who aren't vaccinated didn't get the disease, but these who are vaccinated did? See, you got a problem here. It's like my sons. They didn't get these diseases, but they weren't vaccinated because their immune system sorted it, right? So, and then you say, they say, this is why they invented this. Well, it's because of herd immunity. What do you mean? Well, they weren't vaccinated. Them that didn't get the disease, yeah? It's because they weren't vaccinated that these that were vaccinated did get the disease. That's what it was about. Yeah, okay, right. So let's look at herd immunity. You give someone a vaccine, yeah, to stimulate the immune system to become aware of this disease so it protects them from it, yeah? So it's a deal between the person's vaccinated immune system and the disease, right? Well, yeah. So where's herd immunity come into it? Why do these kids who are not vaccinated have any effect on that dynamic between that vaccinated kid's immune system and the disease? Herd immunity is a hoax simply to explain why unvaccinated kids don't get the diseases and vaccinated kids do, and two, to justify the imposition of vaccination on the unvaccinated to ensure that everyone is vaccinated and there is no basic human right to say no. And I ask people this. If you want a definition of fascism, what better than you do not have a say about what goes into your body or in your children's body? That's a fair definition of fascism, and that's what these people are seeking to impose. And it's global. Why is it global? Why is it happening everywhere? The web I talked about earlier. It's coming from a central point and it's coming out through the web. So it's happening in Australia, it's happening in America, it's been talked about in so many other things. And another question, if you want to manipulate the body, you want to manipulate the DNA, you want to mutate the DNA into something different for very significant reasons that I talk about in the books, what comes from that, or you want to inoculate diseases, as some of their documents have talked about, then what more do you want than to get government, legal, official, mandatory access to the whole population through an hypodermic needle? It's your wet dream if you want to get access to the body's systems. And of course, because of the compartmentalization, the person putting the stuff in through the needle, clueless about what the agenda is. The person prescribing it or insisting on it, overwhelmingly clueless about the real reason it's being done. The people in the factories putting the stuff into the vaccines, clueless about why it's really being done. And then you get deep enough in the rabbit hole and you get to that point where they know exactly why they're doing it. And it's from here that human-caused global warming has been hoaxed, that vaccines are hoaxed, that all these other things are imposed upon society, while the rest of the population impose it upon themselves, impose it upon each other, while being clueless about even the existence of this, never mind why they're insisting that the world is as it is.
Do you think then there is a link between over-vaccination and autism?
100%. Another thing, autoimmune disease. You know, people say, well, you're not a doctor. And you know why? You know what? That's a good thing. Because doctors are programmed. They're programmed and they are herded in two ways. They go through the education system, what passes for it. They call it that. It's not really. It's a programming operation. Programming of perception operations, what school and university and education is. Then they go to medical school. The medical school, overwhelmingly funded and backed and controlled by the big pharmaceutical cartel, then tells them what they not only should believe about the body and treatment and vaccines, etc., but what they must believe if they're going to be a doctor. And what they must do when they become a doctor, otherwise they're struck off. So a doctor is not a free, independent mind. It's a controlled mind, A, through programming of perception, and B, through, if you don't accept the programming, you can find another profession. It's independent people who have a few brain cells working in unison, who simply look at it. And let's look at bombarding a still developing immune system with this tidal wave of toxic shite. It's insane. It's insane. And something like a free, independent mind that's looking at facts rather than preconceived ideas can see that, but the preconceived idea can't see it. And what is a doctor? It's a preconceived idea. But some of them are breaking away. I've just read a brilliant book by an American family doctor called Richard Moskowitz, called Vaccines: A Reappraisal. Any parent that read that book about vaccines, what's in them, their effect, all their hidden figures of damage to kids that people never see, they'd never have the children vaccinated. But they don't read them. They watch CNN. And they're told they can't have their kid at school if they don't get them vaccinated, and so what? Well, don't let them go to school then. That'd be a good thing. They've got a free mind then. But you look, like I say, with an independent something like free mind, you look. I'm always looking for patterns. That's where the truth lies. It doesn't lie in the dots. It lies in the patterns. And it lies in the cause and effects. What we've had, particularly in the explosive vaccine era since the immunity from prosecution, is an explosion of autism and autoimmune disease, where the immune system attacks its own body. What happens is these needles go in, and because they're going into the muscle, they're bypassing very important parts of the immune system, which would react differently if it was on the skin or coming in through the digestive tract. And so these toxins attach to elements of the body. And because they're toxins, the immune system sees them as the threat. And in attacking them, it attacks the body, and so you get autoimmune disease. This is why autoimmune disease has gone through the roof in the vaccine era, in particular the insane levels of vaccinations that we have today. One other thing, where some of these vaccines have live viruses, and this leads to something which has a name. It's called shedding. And what happens is, the live virus is shedded by the vaccinated child or whatever, and it's picked up by other kids who get the disease from the shedding of a live virus. This is well known now. So none of these things are talked about. I mean, the the moronic man, David Coleman, the immigration minister, I hear his backbone vibrating from here, has no clue what he's talking about. He's just a repeater, like most people. Just repeat. What are the people in the streets of London? Extinction Rebellion. They're repeating the official version of everything. People pushing vaccines, repeating. And when you refuse to repeat and say, look, I'll repeat it when I've seen that it's justified to repeat it. Oh, it's not. Well, we'll censor you then. It's this repeating society, this repeater society. How do you know that? Well, everybody knows that. Well, I don't know that, so not everybody. So how do you know that? And it's just because they've heard it over and over again, it must be true.
Well, they do hear it over and over again, and this has really impacted my parents because years ago, they were getting sick every year or so, and I kept saying to them, are you getting any vaccines? Have you had the flu vaccine? Yeah, we've been getting the flu vaccine. Stop getting the flu vaccine. They stopped getting sick. Spoke to my dad a couple of weeks ago. Oh, I'm sick right now, blah, blah, blah. Did you get the flu vaccine? Oh, yeah. Gone back to getting the flu vaccine.
Yeah. How did you get the flu? Vaccine. But this is the thing about flu. The flu virus is constantly mutating. So by the time they've got what they think is a vaccine for the previous thing, it's mutated and it's frickin' useless. So all you're getting is an armful of shite for no reason whatsoever, except that in big pharma coffers.
Taxpayers' money handed over to big
Absolutely.
pharma. America spends more than any country in the world on healthcare, and it's got the sickest people. I think that says what is motivating.
If you look at the infant mortality rate in the United States in the vaccine era, it's way down even in the Western world. So it's not making kids healthier; it's making them sicker. And this is another scam, actually, which this Dr. Moskowitz very eloquently exposes. Because Big Pharma is an empathy-deleted zone, it's only interested in money. It has no empathy or compassion. Can we just deep breath? How does Big Pharma make its money? Billions. Well, from people being sick. So it's got no interest in people being healthy then. It's got an interest in people being sick. So what they're doing in these vaccine scams is you look at the list of side effects, and they're not side effects, they're effects of these vaccines on many, many people, including brain damage, including death, and many other things. What the big pharma cartel has done in the vaccine era, it started producing drugs to treat the effects of the vaccines. Right? So you get a vaccine, you get an effect from the vaccine, they'll sell you a drug to treat the effect of the vaccine. And it's all this. You've got to realize, ladies and gentlemen, that the big pharma cartel is a psychopath's playground. Thus, psychopaths have no interest in your well-being. So whatever they tell you will be good for your well-being should be treated not with a pinch of salt, but with a mindful of it. And then we might start getting our minds back and questioning obvious nonsenses instead of accepting them as unchallengeable truth.
You triggered another thought, though. You said the big pharma makes money from people being sick, but at any point in society, only a minority of people are sick. So let's target the majority of people, the healthy people, by telling they could potentially get sick.
Statins.
Statins.
I put a meme on the internet. It had a doctor talking to this couple, and he said, I want you to take statins because I have to pay for my all expenses paid big pharma trip to the Caribbean, and it saves the government having to pay you a pension. You know what I mean? So just take these statins. What for? It'll stop you having an heart attack, stop you having heart problems. I haven't got heart problems. Yeah, well, we just take this, you know. But of course, it does give you problems, and it does give you it does give you consequences for a number of people in the heart area. So, what are you taking a drug for something you haven't got? What are you doing? But statins are more and more people are on these statins, and they're bringing the age forward. We think you should take statins at 45 now. Well, I've got a 6-month-old grandchild. What do you think? Statins? Yeah. What do you reckon? It's mad, and it's so blatant, Shaun. That's the thing. It's so blatant. We make money from selling things. We've got to give you more and more excuses for you to buy them. It's simple as that. And big pharma it's satanic. It's satanic. It's literally satanic.
I think some on the board that brought the statins to this country were tied into the companies manufacturing the statins. Other thing is, a lot of kids, babies that have died, cot deaths, kids found dead, noses bleeding. In the past, parents would be arrested for baby shaking, but now the police are asking those parents if the kid had recently had a lot of vaccines.
Yes. Now, look, I mean, mate, okay. I don't even have to take a breath and go back here. I don't even have to get that far into this. 6-in-1 vaccines at the same fricking time. They're taking the piss. Whoa, hey, we've got away with 6 now. What do you reckon? 10? Yeah, let's bring the 10-in-1 vaccine in. They'll have the 6. And what's happening in all these areas is they're pushing a gate, and if they meet no resistance, they go through it, they go to the next gate. They get no resistance, they push that, they go to the next gate. So 6-in-1 vaccines. Resistance? Oh, not really. Okay. Oh, how about 10-in-1? So it goes on. And so we've had this explosion of vaccines. And that gate metaphor works right across the society in so many subject areas. But in the end, we still have a mind. They want to take it away from us through AI, connection to the human brain, but we still at the moment have a mind, which, funnily enough, we can use. A mind that just takes that breath and looks at it and says, hold on a minute, does this make sense? I know I've heard it all my life, and I know everyone around me is repeating it, but does it make sense? Does it make sense to put 6 vaccinations into a child at the same time? Huh? And this book, this Richard Muscovitz's book, this doctor's book, tells some horrendous tales of the way what are clearly vaccine-caused medical problems, even death. Something else goes on the death certificate.
Also, breast milk versus formulas. Did you breastfeed your babies, David?
Did I? No. Oh, well, I mean, do you know, the world has got so mad, if I claimed that I had, I'd probably given a government grant or something. Yeah.
I should have done that in my Hannibal Lecter voice. Did you breastfeed your babies, Mom? It makes your nipples hard, doesn't it?
Would. I don't know how women do it. Actually, it looks horrible, but it looks bloody painful. Anyway, I think so. Yeah, and as I remember, I did. Yeah, it was a long time ago, you know. But what they're always trying to do is get through and over the natural into the production, because there's no one sitting on a woman's breast with a cash machine, right? But you stick it in a bottle, you got something to sell, mate. So it's all, and you know, in the end, this is the strange thing. In the end, we're all one consciousness, different points of attention of the same consciousness having different experiences. And in this bewildered, crazy world, people have got so obsessed and so self-identified with these transitory labels of race, of religion, of sexuality, of culture, that where everyone's competing with each other and trying, big pharma trying to screw everybody and all that stuff. For what? For what? And the thing, what this whole conspiracy is about, in its really prime state, is sucking love out of human society. That's what it's seeking to do. There is no love at work in big pharma. That's why it does what it does. If there was an input of love, big pharma would transform. There is no love in censoring a view that you don't like so you get your way. There's no love in doing what we do, what society does to children. There's war on children. And love is the point of balance. You show me any imbalanced situation, whether it's conflict, war, what's happening to kids, whatever. You show me any imbalanced situation that won't be improved by an infusion of love. What is lack of empathy, lack of compassion? It's lack of love. And we have been so played off against each other and set at war with each other down these increasing minutiae of fault lines of division and self-identity that we have this complete absence of love to the point where we have to give it another name. I do smile when I observe society. You know what love is today to so many people? It's anti-hate. That's their version of love. This organization Antifa, which is a fascistic anti-fascist organization in this inverted world that we live in, that seeks to beat up people that it doesn't agree with. It talks about being anti-hate. You look at the progressive left as opposed to the truly liberal left, and it talks about being anti-hate. When do they ever talk about love? Anti-hate is not love. It's just another version of hate. That's why the anti-haters have hate in their face when they're demanding we stop hating. And if we started talking about love as opposed to anti-hate, we might get a different society, because society is imbalanced because love's been sucked out of it. Certainly been sucked out of the upper echelons of society that are making decisions based on an agenda, and no matter what the consequences are for other people, love could never do that. Love would say, hold on a minute, what about the consequences for these people? There wouldn't be people who are multi-billionaires or people sleep in the streets down the road. Love would say, this is an imbalance. I got billions and this guy's in the street. It's an imbalance here. Love would balance that. Hey, how can I help you, mate? What's going on? But with the absence of love, that's what evil is. That's what evil is. It's the absence of love. We need to infuse it back. And part of that love is to not think about consequences for expressing love and speaking your truth, but doing it because it's right. Love will always do what it knows to be right. And love does not consider consequences, because to consider consequences is to consider the very possibility that you will not do what you know to be right because of consequences. Love will never do that. It does what it knows to be right. It speaks its truth and it stands up for what it believes in. It doesn't consider consequences. It considers consequences inconsequential. The more people do that, the more this world will change. And the more people consider consequences and keep backing down the alleyway to the wall at the end, the more this world will become more extreme than it is now. It's our choice.
We started out this podcast with Julian Assange exposing the war on terror, So we're just going to round up the podcast now with the war on drugs. Whenever I see war on coming out of America, I'm like, oh, something's not right here. What do you think about the war on drugs?
Well, the war on drugs overwhelmingly is a Orwellian inversion. If you're going to run drugs, the best way to do it unsuspected is to do it through an anti-drug agency. It's what with your book and the film. This is what the Clintons and the frickin' Bushes were doing. Father George Bush, one of the major drug runners in America, he was having wars on drugs when he was president. And of course, wars on drugs from the Bush's point of view is a war on the competition, right? Bush was exposed by the San Jose Mercury News, a very proper journalist reporter, for putting crack cocaine on the streets of Los Angeles. And by the way, who attacked the reporter more than the rest of the bloody media in America for actually exposing the story? So drugs are used, one, to create enormous amounts of money to spend on this agenda outside of government traceable funds, and also to absolutely destroy human society. Look at the opioid epidemic in America now. It's destroying vast numbers of people. And so they talk about a war on drugs, but what they are doing is making them circulate. Say what you like about the Taliban, and a lot should be said about the Taliban. When they got control of Afghanistan, the poppy fields disappeared. When the American military sent the boys in, they suddenly went to record levels of poppy production. Because I go into this in the trigger. The ISI, the Pakistan military intelligence, which is very close to the CIA, they were running an operation through Afghanistan to get the source of the drugs, make the drugs, and get the drugs into America. Mohammed Attar was almost certainly flying drugs out of the Venice airport, where he's supposed to be learning to fly. According to the Times of India, he was wired $100,000 on the behest of the head of the Pakistan ISI just before 9/11. So, of course, the media, see, he was wired that money because it was for 9/11. Two questions. Why then aren't you arresting the head of the ISI who wired the money if the money was involved in 9/11? Why was that head of the ISI in Washington, D.C. on September the 11th meeting with CIA representatives? And why has nothing ever happened to him? That money wired was to do with the drugs that Attar was involved in. Attar was just put in the wrong place at the wrong time. He wasn't even on the plane, but he was in the right place to be blamed for it.
So you mentioned these presidents then, through the CIA Black Ops, coordinating drugs coming into the country, while ramping up the war on drugs themselves. Yeah. The cost of this was mass incarceration, hundreds of thousands of non-violent drug possessors going to prison. At the peak of the war on drugs, you had over 500,000 arrests a year for weed possession. When I was in the jail in Arizona, before I got arrested for prisoners of pedophiles, murderers, rapists, when I got in there, the average arrest was a black kid or a Mexican kid with a little bit of weed getting a 2 to 5 year sentence.
Yeah, and what they're doing now, they're pushing legalization of it. Why? Because the corporations are taking it over. Corporations are going to take this whole marijuana thing, legalized marijuana thing, and make an industry of it.
Because it was made illegal in the first place out of San Francisco, the pharmaceutical societies. They didn't want people growing free medicine in their own backyards. No. So now you still can't grow it in your own backyard, but you can buy it from a corporation.
Yeah, and of course they will produce a form which will not be. I mean, even the stuff today, as I understand it, from listening to people who've researched this, It's not the marijuana of the 60s that people are having now. So the corporations have hijacked it. That's what they do. That's why they've hijacked the food supplement industry and synthesized it. And if it's synthetic, it's frickin' useless. But they sell it in their stores at high prices. Oh yeah, I take this good stuff. I only have natural. No, you're having synthetic. It's not natural. If it was natural, it'd be good. So why would a psychopathic, empathy-free zone like Big Pharma be interested in the well-being of the population, whether it's synthetic food supplements and vitamins or marijuana? They wouldn't.
I read the story about this biochemist in the medical profession, and he got prostate cancer. So he's going in to his doctor, and basically he said, your chances of survival, after this treatment, are very low. He had a friend, a hippie out of San Francisco, female, and she said, get on the cannabis oil. And he got on the cannabis oil, and he went back for the x-ray. Cancer was completely gone.
I know a story just like that. A friend of mine in Canada, quite a well-known guy. I spoke to him, and he was basically in terrible pain with cancer in bed. And he went on the cannabis oil, and I spoke in Toronto, and I knew he was still alive. I invited him to the event, and I invited him, to come and have a chat beforehand. And I was kind of expecting this frail guy walking in the hotel bar. This guy was absolutely healthy as hell. Cannabis oil from late line cancer, and there's so many people who die, so many people who suffer ongoing who don't have to. If only we were allowed to have all information and possibility instead of only that which we're allowed to see and allowed to access.
It breaks my heart that hundreds of thousands of people must have died, maybe even millions,
Yep.
because they couldn't get this free medicine. And all these little kids now that have the seizures, they have multiple seizures, they can go into a coma and die. All the people who've died in the past, they're still getting, some of them still getting denied access to the oil. But now these evil, psychopathic politicians who care mostly about votes, they can't go up against these little sick, dying babies. And that's why, I don't know if you're familiar with the case of Charlotte's Web's cannabis oil. That's been used now in America at the state level, the people voting for it, to get it legalized, at least for medicinal purposes.
Yeah, and if you had empathy, you would say, whatever it takes to help this kid. That's what you'd say. You wouldn't say, well, he breaks this law. Well, the law's freaking nonsense then, isn't it? You would do it. And that's, again, where the absence of love just exposes itself. This is the problem with human society. It's an absence of love. That's it. I heard a song this week. It said, I'd never heard of it before. I think it's quite well known. I don't know much, but I know I love you. Maybe that's all I need to know. And it finished off, it said, I don't know much, but I know I love you. Maybe that's all there is to know. And maybe it is, because from that, everything comes. From the lack of that, something very different, everything comes. The absence of love. That's why human society is as it is. Change that, change everything.
I think that note of love is a perfect one to end the podcast on. If you've enjoyed this interview today, all of David's links are in the description box below this video. Have you got your book coming out on what date is that again?
September the 11th.
What's it called?
It's called The Trigger, The Lie That Changed the World, Who Did It, Who Really Did It, and Why. And it's available for pre-order at the start of August. And I do, so I'm not kind of trying to flog the book, but the pre-orders are very important because I want this book as widely circulated as possible before it hits the mainstream. Because I don't know what's going to happen after that.
Have you got any tours coming up in countries you're not banned from or anywhere else?
No, not at the moment, because it's getting, at the moment, more and more difficult to find anywhere to speak that's not pulled because of, not protests from the public, quite the opposite. The numbers that come are getting bigger all the time, but by the people that want to silence me, lying about what I'm going to say to the venue. And the venue does not say, hold on, they say you're going to say this. Are you going to say this? No, they just pull it. We find about, quite a number of times, we found out that one of our events is off from the media. The venue has never told us. So it's getting more difficult that way. But I will go back on the road, and I will go back into Australia, because the power of consciousness, the power of love, the power of intent is far more powerful. The power of consciousness is far more powerful than these little boys in short trousers. And so I will go back into Australia. And you know, when, we'll see, but I will go back in there.
At the peak of my criminal enterprise, I did have the ability to move people around the world who were banned from certain countries, so we could share some techniques later on. Are there any other ways people out there in YouTube land can support you or help you?
Well, I've got a YouTube channel where there's videos on there being put there all the time. And, you know, it's about sharing the information. You know, people say, what can I do? Well, the very least what you can do is send out to all your friends information you think that they would benefit from seeing. And then, I mean, this movie, Renegade, it's about an hour and 40 minutes or so. One of the great encouraging things is the number of people that have contacted me and said that they took friends along or family who were not into this information at all, and it had a massive effect on them, because that's why it was made. So Renegade is a really great way of introducing people for the first time to this information.
And if you are interested in David's books, the first one I read, that was given to me in Max Security, Alice in Wonderland, about 9/11, completely changed my worldview. That was approximately 15 years ago now. I'm sat in the Arizona cell, just sweating, bed sores all over me.
Oh my God.
Got this little stereo, tuning into this radio show called Coast to Coast.
Yes.
Where I heard you getting interviewed back then.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, so got out, continued to read your book, continued to share your information. And to go from that 15 years ago to have my own podcast now, and you being such a huge influence on my life and development, I can't thank you enough.
It's a real pleasure.
Being generous with your time.
You are.
You're talking about love. It's going to have to be a
okay.
hug situation here, David. Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.